In a year already defined by coalition chaos, economic uncertainty, and mounting global pressure, South Africa now faces one of its greatest diplomatic tests in the post-apartheid era. As the first African nation to lead the G20, South Africa has a historic opportunity to shape the global agenda on trade, climate, and justice, but it enters this arena with fractured political unity, growing foreign distrust, and a leadership struggling to project credibility. US officials are snubbing key summits, allies are growing impatient, and at home, Ramaphosa's coalition partners are fuming over being sidelined. So how did we get here? Is this presidency a moment of glory, or the start of a diplomatic disaster? In this video, we break down the high-stakes drama unfolding around South Africa's G20 leadership, and why the world is watching. In 2025, South Africa holds the rotating presidency of the G20, marking the first time an African nation has taken the helm of the world's most influential economic forum. For President Cyril Ramaphosa and his fragile government of national unity, GNU, it's more than just a ceremonial chair, it's a high-stakes diplomatic battleground that could shape the country's global legacy and redefine its post-election identity. This moment arrives at a time when South Africa is wrestling with serious domestic crises, crumbling infrastructure, high unemployment, factionalism within the ANC, and an unstable coalition government. And now, it must simultaneously present itself as a bridge between the global North and South, a climate leader, a BRICS loyalist, and a G20 modernizer. That balancing act is becoming increasingly fraught. The G20 presidency demands leadership on issues like climate finance, debt restructuring, fair trade, and multilateral reform. Ramaphosa's administration has prioritized inclusive multilateralism and African representation in global decision-making. But these lofty goals are hitting hard geopolitical limits. A diplomatic slide came when U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent declined to attend the July G20 Finance Ministers Summit in Johannesburg. His absence, though officially attributed to scheduling, is widely seen as a quiet protest, possibly over the ANC's trade envoy Mcebisai Jonas being denied a U.S. visa, or more broadly, South Africa's pivot toward BRICS nations and refusal to fully align with Western sanctions regimes. Even as South Africa tries to use its presidency to reposition itself as a trusted negotiator between East and West, signs of being sidelined are growing. European and American officials are increasingly cautious, while BRICS allies, Russia, China, and India, are demanding stronger anti-Western postures, particularly over currency reform and global banking structures. Meanwhile, Ramaphosa's own political authority is under strain at home. Key GNU members are angry that major diplomatic engagements are being coordinated without consensus. The DA has accused the presidency of a BRICS bias and opaque diplomacy, while the EFF and MK party deride the G20 as a neo-colonial club. For Ramaphosa, walking this tightrope without alienating partners or undermining South Africa's credibility has become an impossible task. The stakes are not just symbolic. With the United States imposing sweeping 30% tariffs on South African agricultural and automotive exports, and with EU green tariff systems about to go live, Pretoria's voice at the G20 should be louder than ever. But it's unclear whether South Africa can effectively advocate for African interests when it's mired in internal confusion and under external pressure. Some analysts are calling the G20 presidency a lost opportunity. There was potential here to lead Africa's voice on climate justice and trade equity, says Dr. Nomvula Masiko of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Instead, we are watching a country that can't even get its own diplomats into Washington, and whose coalition government can't agree on a single foreign policy sentence. Others argue that the G20 moment, if handled boldly, could still be salvaged. By championing debt cancellation for African nations, pushing for a restructured World Bank, and advocating a South-South climate finance pact, South Africa could reset its reputation and gain global capital, both financial and political. But time is running out. The next major G20 summit in October is expected to take place in Durban. Behind the scenes, Ramaphosa's team is scrambling to secure high-level attendance. China and India are expected to send top-level delegates. The White House, however, remains undecided. European leaders are concerned about whether the summit venue meets security protocols, but the deeper fear is instability. Already, there are murmurs that if things don't improve, some G20 members might downgrade their participation or call for a G20- emergency session outside South Africa's jurisdiction. That would be a profound diplomatic embarrassment. To avoid that outcome, South Africa must urgently professionalize its G20 coordination. That includes better messaging, wider stakeholder inclusion, and ensuring that every government department speaks with one voice. So far, that's not happening. Some GU officials privately admit they were left out of briefing sessions with foreign delegations. Others complain that key trade and climate decisions are being negotiated directly through the president's economic advisors, bypassing the usual parliamentary or interministerial oversight. And yet, for all the chaos, there's still potential. If South Africa can secure climate adaptation funding for African nations, if it can force a conversation on global financial reform, if it can use its chairmanship to spotlight Africa's vast renewable energy capacity and untapped youth labor force, then this presidency might be remembered not for its stumbles, but for its ambition. But ambition without execution is a recipe for collapse. At the heart of the challenge is a fundamental question: can South Africa be a leader on the global stage when its own house is not in order? As Ramaphosa prepares for the October summit and a series of sideline bilateral talks with major powers, that question will hang over every handshake, every joint communiqué, every awkward photo op. And the world, especially the rest of Africa, will be watching. Because if South Africa succeeds, it won't just elevate its own standing. It could permanently alter how African nations are perceived in the highest halls of global governance. But if it fails, it may take years to repair the reputational damage. And in politics, as in diplomacy, perception is often everything. South Africa's G20 presidency was meant to be a crowning moment, a chance to elevate the country as a continental voice, a climate champion, and a fair broker between East and West. Instead, it's being tested by diplomatic cold shoulders, internal fractures, and a world wondering if Pretoria can live up to the moment. As President Ramaphosa prepares for the critical October summit in Durban, the stakes could not be higher. Will South Africa rise above its internal discord and prove itself on the world stage? Or will this be remembered as a missed opportunity, where politics got in the way of progress? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.